everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 11 of ORB on the movements of the earth. And yes, last episode, Yolenta is kind of distancing herself from Bodini and Akshi, who have been perfecting the heliocentric theory, and we ended off the episode with a familiar face returning. Oh, Nowak's back, and he's got two apprentices to learn the ways of the Inquisition, and I'm terrified to see where this is all going to lead. But you know what? We're not there yet, so we got to get through this episode before we can worry too much, right? So I do have a couple comments I want to talk about before we start. Someone had posted in the Discord after I had reacted to episode 10, I saw this in the Discord, and this is around the time of episode 8 coming out on Patreon. Someone had posted a picture of Bodini, and the scars that he has form a 7 from the duel that is talked about in episode 10. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because 7 is often known as a number that's associated with Christianity and divinity. So I thought that was interesting that Bodini had the 7. It kind of ties to his sort of self-perpetuated acknowledgement that he's a chosen one and is special and worthy and all that. So it just kind of fed into that motif for his character, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, that was interesting. And then Ashio Ravenclaw, fellow Ravenclaw, I feel you, 2052 for episode 7 says, I wanted to add something interesting. Recently, I came across someone in my country complaining that their paper was accepted by a journal, but editors required it to be submitted with their mentor as the first author. The person was really dissatisfied with this and withdrew their submission, but other people commented, albeit kindly, that they're never going to get it published under their own name because they're still a postgrad student, which is just the way things are with the humanities fields in the country. It's really unfortunate that these things still happen today. Yeah, and I want to talk about that because we talked about Yolenta and the whole Yolenta and Colby situation, which I think is similar but different in a way. I, as a humanities major, the only reason I have honestly not pursued my PhD is because 1, cost, 2, time. It takes like 4 extra years to become a PhD student, and I would not be able to run this channel and do a PhD workload on top of my work schedule. Impossible. 3, where I'm teaching now, it does not require a doctorate degree. So at this point, it would really just be for my own personal enjoyment, which is something in itself, or a sense of accomplishment. But also because in the United States, if you have like at the 2-year college level or a community college level, or at some colleges, a master's degree is all you need, and it's primarily teaching. Whereas when you go into the university route as a PhD student, as a doctor teaching literature at that level, teaching is a function, but research is a primary thing, and publishing is a primary thing, and peer-reviewed journals. Like I have friends that are doctorate university professors that they have to write and publish so much a year to keep their job, which is an insane pressure, because what if it doesn't get accepted? What happens if your work gets peer-reviewed and rejected? There's a lot of different factors to it, and as Ashio Raven points out, part of the stigma is you kind of have to it's who you know. It's who you know. So when you publish, you need to kind of have those names to kind of back you up to get yourself started. And I would say that's true of a lot of fields. You really, even if you're self-made and you start from nothing, you kind of have to make connections and you have to network and get your name out there. And people oftentimes have to recommend you. The first job I ever got was because a woman that worked at a college said, hey, I know this girl, she can do a good job. And it was through that word of mouth. Otherwise, the dean said he would not have picked my resume. And I'm like, so, that's part of the game. I think the difference in Yolenta's case is, 1, the time that it happened where women were especially ostracized against and put prejudice upon and oppressed. That has a huge factor that is different than modern day. And 2, the fact of, are you doing this because you want to take the credit yourself and the clout yourself, or were you trying to help? Whereas Ravenclaw's example is someone trying to offer their networking and to take it to help, put a name behind it. In Colby's case, he just wanted the credit for himself. and Yolenta was exploited in that process. So it's different, but similar to now. So I totally could relate to that comment. Sorry to go off on that tangent, but I could absolutely relate. The higher ed world is an enigma at times. Moomin for episode 8 says, to me, Count Piast is practicing a sunk cost fallacy. I love when we talk about fallacies. I'm like, it's been so long since I've taught rhetoric in person. So I'm like, it's great to like talk about fallacies. He has invested his whole life to this idea and the truth. Unfortunately, it's not how the galaxy functions, but according to a perfect God, it has to. It's like trying to cram a square peg into a round hole. This is why the scientific process works by trying to prove something wrong. That means that it is peer-reviewed, so there are faulty results from a study. If there are, they will be revealed. Hank Green has an amazing, if you're from the US and you need to get a palate cleanse from the current political climate, especially in terms of talking about neurodivergency and the correlation with certain painkillers. This will instantly date this video. But Hank Green has a video out on his channel that recently talked about the process of research and the process of biases and the process of where our current political climate is taking information and presenting it. And it kind of relates to the cost fallacy a little bit. So go check it out. I'll try to remember to include a link down below in the description, but if I forget, go look it up. But anyway, I think that's very important. And we as humans, we are proud creatures and we don't want to be proven wrong. And sometimes we would rather try to make this thing fit our narrative so we're not proven wrong rather than just accept the fact that, hey, we were wrong. Let's try to find the right answer. You know, human things. And then finally, a luminist said, apparently the House of Piast is a real thing. And they sent me a wiki link to it, which I was like, okay, let's get into this. And so, yeah, the House of Piast was the first historical ruling dynasty of Poland. The first documented Polish monarch was Duke Mieszko. I probably said that wrong. The Piast royal rule of Poland ended in 1370 with the death of King Casimir III the Great. And so, yeah, there's all this information about them, which is interesting. There is the early dukes and kings of Poland are said to have regarded themselves as the descendants of the semi-legendary Piast the Wheelwright. The Wheelwright is such a cool title. The Wheelwright is interesting. But yeah, so basically there's a whole family line about them, which is really cool. And they finally dissolved completely in the 1700s. So that's wild. Their coat of arms is a white eagle, a symbol later referred to as the Piast eagle. Interesting. And they used an eagle modified by a crescent, which became the coat of arms for the Duchy of Silesia. Interesting. Cool. Nice. I find genealogy fascinating, especially because I am 100% Eurotrash. So I'm a Euro mutt. I'm just like a mix of many European bloodlines. But I find it interesting. Genealogy is neat. So that's really cool. And it started around the early 10th century. Fun times! But yeah, I have talked way too much about this intro, and I'm ready to just dive into episode 11. Nowak is back, which means all bets are off. Things are going to get crazy, and we just need to dive into it. Anyway, I have coffee in hand. I'm excited to go, but we are going to start episode 11 of Orb on the Movements of the Earth, almost to the halfway point. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. I'm scared. This episode being titled Terror felt very appropriate. Very appropriate. There was a lot of things said in this episode that I was like, oh, that's foreshadowing. Oh, that's foreshadowing. Oh, that's foreshadowing. And I was like, oh no. My fear is that Nowak is going to eat his words. I feel like Nowak, however you want to say it. I feel like he is going to eat his words. I feel like Yolenta is in so much danger right now. So much danger. And maybe not. Maybe there's a happy silver lining. I feel like there's either two ways this is going to go with her character. But Badini and Aksha, they in danger, girl. They in so much danger. I feel like, again, back in episode 1, the very first episode, There was Novak using the pair of anguish on who I believe was Aksha. I think Aksha's going to get tortured. I think he's going to get tortured. The big question is, how is Bodini going to react to all this and get out of this? Bodini will throw anybody under the bus. 1000%. Bodini will throw anyone under the bus to save his own skin, especially when he has things yet to do. So there's all this foreshadowing, all of this stuff being set up. Novak is reeling from a lot of, he's been spending a decade being traumatized by a 12-year-old. Let's just acknowledge that, because Raffles' words shook him to his core. And you can tell in this, I can't believe Netflix wanted me to skip this recap. What would have happened if I had skipped it? I'm curious. Where would it go? Oh, okay. It would have gone literally 10 seconds later. Netflix, figure yourself out. So Novak is training these two new recruits who are very interesting in terms of, we have the two recruits, right? We're going to put them up here. I forget their names, but I'm sure they'll come back. We have the two recruits. One of the recruits is more of a coward, that's also very insecure, but also has the, I would say, better heart. He was a coward in the sense that he wouldn't use the torture tools, but in the same sense, he was like, I have empathy for her. I'm not going to use it. I'm like, it's so funny because usually we think of cowardice as being an attribute of the weak-minded or the inferior. Whereas in this guy's case, him not wanting to torture a woman for information on getting medicine, right? And for lying, which lying is bad, but it also is a human reaction to avoid pain. Like, it's very a human emotion. So, I feel like in this case, it's interesting because his cowardice is actually something that you kind of should look at, because it's like, oh, well, he didn't want to torture this woman because he knew it was wrong. He just didn't know how to articulate that and say it in the right way. So he just was like, no, I'm not going to do this. Whereas the other guy seems more like not oblivious. Oblivious is not the right word. That's an Aksha word. He seems more simple-minded about it, but that's also the problem, is that he's like, I'll go and do what quote unquote needs to be done. And I feel like you have two individuals who are kind of representatives of these two minds of thought, right? And we tie this to, I'm from the US, so of course I'm going to relate it to my own political climate around me. But you have this one guy, the blonde, who is pretty simple-minded. He's like, he seems innocent, he seems well-meaning, but when push comes to shove, despite all of the problems in front of him with the actions that he's being told to do, he does them and obeys because he's just like, well, I guess that's the way things are. And he doesn't critically think about the ramifications or the external things about it, right? Which is indicative of a population of people I know. And then you have the darker haired guy who comes across as cowardly and comes across as weaker. But the reality is he's trying to weigh the morality of what he's doing and he can't do it. And in the face of this violent rhetoric that's put upon him, that makes him seem weaker. But in reality, he's actually choosing the more ethically responsible thing to do and apologizes for it. And it's like, no, you don't apologize for, having humanity, and also for realizing the hypocrisy put in front of you by the Inquisition. So I just, you can debate it a lot of ways. But here's my problem. Okay. So Novak comes in, and Novak is like, Novak, he comes in and he's like, look, this is it's just for humanity. And by humanity, as put forth by the church and the bishop. Now, we learn a little bit about the bishop in this episode and why perhaps it's basically Ringo Starr with power. He's like, dealing with heretics and torturing him. He's like, don't worry. The thing you should be most prepared for is the amount of paperwork required to close even one heretic's case. I do like that we're talking about the amount of paperwork. I do like we're talking about the legalities and the formalities of it. And Nowak just is like, he's like, that part I hate. He's like, but it's what we have to do. He's like, don't you want to move up the ladder efficiently, right? So here's how I approach things. If you volunteer for small cases, you'll earn points with him. And then rather than spending a lot of time on a major target, you just take care of smaller ones in larger numbers. Greater numbers earn you a good reputation. So he frames this idea that it is quantity over quality, which again, if you're in the US and you're talking about a lot of the search and seizures, a lot of stuff with immigration going on, and about people being targeted, and it's like, oh, they're being targeted. Are they actually, doing these major crimes? Well, maybe not, but it's quantity over quality. And all the problems with that. How things don't change. Humans, get it together. The more things change, the more they stay the same. But it's so frustrating. Anyway, I'm not going to get on a political soapbox. Y'all can do that in the comments down below. But one thing that is interesting is that he frames it as just do all these little cases, and they will earn you this reputation. And you will be able to rise up through the ranks doing that. And then we talk about how the bishop is all about the cosmos and cases that involve that. That's how he earned his favor with the bishop. And the one guy's like, why is the bishop concerned with the cosmos? So we find out that he once studied astronomy. Very much like Ringo Starr, like Piast, like all of that. But now he hates it. Now, there could be a number of reasons for this. We don't exactly know what the situation is, but he says when that happens, he usually points to trouble long ago. Your young experiences tend to stick with you. As if Nowak is practically, hinting at the fact of Raffles' words and how they've stuck with him for over a decade. And how he's just completely still trapped within that moment of Raffles' confrontation with him. And he keeps on, just trying to see that out by doing all of these different things. It's fascinating. But yeah, and how his youth had tarnished his view of astronomy. So there's a lot of possibilities with that. One, it could be that he could have been like Piast and studied something his entire existence. And then when he got into the church, he realized that the church's view was different than his, but in order for him to rise the ranks, he had to leave behind that former view and accept this view that wasn't necessarily his. You see that a lot when people move into positions where they want to gain power and status. They oftentimes have to compromise their morals and their beliefs and adopt those of the parties in power to gain the status that they want. And it's kind of a factor of which do you value more, your moralities or the position of authority. And so, you have to make that decision. So that's one possibility. It could be that he hit a wall with his research and he didn't want to do it anymore. It could be that he was proven wrong by someone. It could be that he was targeted. We don't know about the bishop. The bishop is very mysterious at this point. But what we do know is that he has a son. I'm going to put in parentheses illegitimate. I don't know. It seems like Nowak would know the tea because he tortures a bunch of heretics and would torture people. And if somebody was spreading around rumors about Antony being the son, they probably would be targeted and taken out. And Nowak would have found that out from interrogating them. So apparently Antony is the son. He is also a curate, which we're going to talk about. And he does not respect his dad. Does not respect his dad. Whether he thinks his dad is a hypocrite or not, we don't know. He does not also like the Inquisition. So he does not value the Inquisition and is also someone that is money-minded. So we're going to talk about that. I want to look up real quick what a curate is because I am not as familiar with the Catholic Church. A member of the clergy engaged as an assistant to the vicar, rector, or parish priest. A minister with pastoral responsibility. Okay, so he's tied to the church. He's tied to the church, but he's not necessarily a priest. He's just a person invested with the care or cure of souls of a parish. In this case, curate means a parish priest, but in many English-speaking countries, the term curate is commonly used to describe clergy who are assistants. Their duties or office of a curate are called the curacy. All right, yeah. So and I can understand why he would be involved in the church, because in this particular place in Europe, in this particular time period, there is a lot of privilege with working in the church. There is a secure shelter. There is a secure income. There is a secure status. So even if you don't quite believe everything going on within the church, if you are part of it, it grants you a lot of privilege. What's interesting is Bodini, for example. Bodini, on the outside of things, you would think that he's just taking advantage of the privilege for his research and for his own clout. But the cool thing about Bodini that's so interesting is he legitimately believes in his religion and practices it and is very faithful to God. He just also believes he's a chosen one. So, like you do, he's somewhat narcissistic. But yeah, I that's fascinating as far as character-wise goes. But Antony seems like he's just in the church to gain status, to gain money. He's running this place like a business, and he does not like the practices that his father is doing as bishop, especially when it comes to the Inquisition. The irony of churches being obsessed with money and capitalism is not lost on me, is so crazy to me that I just, as a Christian myself, I'm like, did y'all read the book? Did you read the book? Did you read the book? I don't think you read the book. So it just, yeah. Anyway, so Jesus kicking people out of kicking the tax collectors and money collectors out of churches. I'm not going to get into it, but the irony is there. So he asked me more questions, like, let's continue the Inquisition chamber. So then there's Antony. One thing that's interesting is that Nowak is honestly scared of Antony, or at least very nervous around him. And I think the only reason for that is that Antony does, right now, Nowak, I do feel he doesn't take advantage of it, but he very much understands the privilege he has by being in the bishop's pocket. He knows he can go places. He knows he can do things. He knows he has privilege and access to things other people do not, because the bishop is in good favor with him. And he's in good favor with him because he has tried heretics related to heliocentrism and things of that nature. But Antony does not seem to care about heliocentrism or the cosmos. Antony, from this interaction, seems like he only cares about running the church like a business and does not understand why the bishop is wasting all this money on the Inquisition. And he's just like, whatever, don't like it. And so Antony is also someone, because he's the bishop's son and he's a curate, is in a position of power, and he's the one person that Nowak can't technically mouth off to or get the better of, because if Antony really says anything to the bishop, he might have some power there. So he's like the only person that Nowak so far we see has actually feared, except for Raffle. So that part's interesting to me. That part is so interesting to me. And Antony is just like, why are these Inquisitions here? Why do we have new recruits? He's like, you are costing us enough money already. And he's like, well, a clergyman shouldn't fret over money, right? And he tries to he's like, you're ignorant as always. Which someone telling Nowak he's ignorant is interesting. He's like, listen to me. Whether it's fighting holy wars or maintaining the church, they both require money. You need to learn what money is really worth. He's like, I don't know how. It's interesting he says the bishop because he doesn't want to say his father because it's illegitimate. And he's like, yeah, the bishop's stupidity knows no bounds. Here's my thing. My theory, and this is just an off-the-wall theory because I have no clue. Akshay is going to get tortured. Akshay, as far as I know from that opening segment in episode 1, Akshay is going to get tortured. Now, whether he's going to die or not, I don't know. We'll talk about it later in this episode. But Akshay is going to get tortured. Bodini is an absolute mystery to me. Bodini, I feel Bodini would throw Akshay under the bus to save his skin. Yep, I think he would. And I think he would take advantage of the fact that he was a deacon, even though he talked about at the dinner abandoning it. I think he'll take advantage of it one more time to get out and to save his skin so he can at least pass on the heliocentrism part. There's multiple theories I have. We're going to break it down on Whiteboard Coon. Don't you worry. But I feel like what happens in total is dependent upon what happens to Bodini. I think that depends on a lot of it. But one of my theories, we'll put down theory 1 here, is one of my theories is that Antony is going to end up with the heliocentric material and will have a hand in either helping Bodini or publishing it himself, is what I think. And I'm not going to look it up because I don't want spoilers, but I feel like Antony seems to have enough disdain for his father. Maybe he loves his father, but he doesn't respect him and feels like he needs to be put in his place. I feel like Antony would very much take the material from Bodini and publish it, or help Bodini to get it published in the long run. I feel like he would. And I feel like he's the one person Nowak can't touch, so it would allow that to happen. Whether or not that ends up happening, I don't know. But I feel like he's going to have a hand in all this. And the fact that he is not on the same side as the Inquisition would help out Bodini and Aksha's cause. Whether or not he actually helps out them individually still remains to be seen, right? So there's still that to look into. But yeah, of course he's celibate in public. Again, what is so fascinating is the hypocrisy that's just out there in the open. The hypocrisy, the idea that the bishop, who is supposed to be the holier than thou person, is having sex on the side and has a son and all this. And they're like, but aren't these the church's rules? And he's like, yeah, those are the rules, unless you're the one in charge. Unless you're the position with power. Then it's not. Then we don't have to play by the rules. And again, we see this in our modern times. CEOs, billionaires, people in power, taking advantage of other people in the system. What? Never heard of it. What? Just, God. So, this series cleanses me. It gives me at least moments of understanding people that are likewise in the same boat. So this woman he says, be careful of one thing. They're skillful liars. Here's my thing. We're going to talk about Nowak and Yolenta and him being like, oh, you've been hanging out with my daughter. Ha 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 ha. We're going to talk about that whole thing. Because Bodini, without realizing it. At first, I thought Bodini was being smart and clever. But I think that's just his personality. And that's just how he is as a character. And he was honestly possibly either digging his own grave or saving his own skin. And we'll talk about that later. But here's my issue. Nowak has portrayed all of these heretics as skillful liars. Skillful liars. And he's like, no matter what they say, just keep torturing them and they'll eventually tell the truth. So just torture for truth. And the worst part about this example is that it was exactly the example that Nowak needed. Nowak is a good enough person to understand facial expressions, and he's been doing this for decades. He knows facial expressions, he knows tones, he knows attitudes. He can read people like a freaking book. And so the moment he was in that tavern with Aksha, even if he couldn't tell Aksha's face, he knew something was up. He knew by Aksha's reactions that this guy was suspicious. And he had the tip to make him have, an alibi and a reason to suggest that. A rightful, right to warrant for a search. So, I mean, the thing is, Nowak picked this person to train them with intentionally because he knew she was lying. And he knew that she was involved and that he could get her to crack. And I think it's important. I think that he picked a woman specifically. I think he did that intentionally. I feel because, biologically speaking, or by studying her personality, he may have noticed that she was more inclined to crack. And so he picked her. But this is where I think all of this is he's going to eat his own words. Because he picked a woman. He knew that she was the prime suspect and target, and knew she would crack, and knew she would prove his point, where she would lie, and then once they tortured her enough, she would reveal that, no, actually she was telling a lie. Right? And that we've talked about how the two of them reacted to the situation. Here's the problem. When they go outside, he's like, you did well. And he hands the torture device, which is just this vice to put on her thumb. And the one guy agrees to do it. And then she admits, she's like, I just went out to the Black Mass to get medicine for my brother. That's all I did, which is, I think that the one guy, the fact that when she cried out to God, he realized what they were doing was wrong and stopped. He's like, if you want to finish work early, you'll need a change of heart. So this idea that you're going to have to harden your heart for this job, it breaks my heart because their job is to torture people, to hurt humanity. Their job is to do things which are not in the Bible, are not the teachings of God, but are teachings of man and teachings of the church. And the bishop is promoting this because of some like absolute projected intense insecurity about the cosmos and about people that believe differently than the church. And the one guy kind of recognizes that it's wrong, but the other guy's like, well, it's a job and this is what we've got to do. And there are people that do horrible things to other people for the sake of a job. And that's just the way it is. And it hardens your heart to see. I talk about this because my dad and my brother are involved in aspects of criminal justice, aspects of security. And my brother's a security guard. My dad works at a correctional facility. And I have very distinct ideas about restorative justice and about the justice system. My brother and my dad slightly disagree with me on many things. But I notice that them and their friends who work there are constantly around negative aspects about humanity. They're around people who are dealing with mental health issues. They are around people who are dealing with having committed crimes. They're around people that are in the worst possible place, that are not stable. And not that it makes them mean to those people, and I'm not saying that, but being around people that are in the worst possible situation all the time and are reactive to that, it does change the way you view people. And it changes the way you harden your heart to stomach doing things and feeling certain ways and being complicit or okay with certain things happening, because that's what you have to do to keep a stable job, insurance. And it's awful. And my dad and my brother have never done anything to hurt anyone, but they know people that have. And they're like, that's what they had to do. And I'm like, ooh. And I think of the people that, you know, do certain jobs and it's not right and it's not good and I don't like it, but that's their mentality. That's where they are sitting at, right? And they kind of curate this mentality about people to justify what they're doing, because otherwise you would feel absolute shit all the time. Should you feel absolute shit all the time about it? Yeah, kind of. In certain situations, sure. But that's the way that they've made this world. That's the way humans have made this world. We've done this to ourselves. Which is frustrating to no end. But they kind of are like, well, this is for the sake of humanity, so we have to do this. This is for the sake of a greater good. We have to do this. When the reality is, no, you don't. You shouldn't. You've made up this story to make yourself feel less responsible and accountable for the things happening. And it just... But here's my problem. The one guy, he's like, I don't know if I can do this. He's like, well, they might lie to escape the pain. And he feels like he's coming from a place of knowing that he's done the same thing that they've done. So he feels kind of guilty about relating to them. And he's like, God's love, you know, and then Nowak's like, no, that's not how we do. And the light shining on him, he's like, we have no authority in the first place. So Nowak's kind of like, you need to get rid of those thoughts of compassion, which is problematic. And I think it's going to come back to bite him, because we're going to talk about it here in a second. He's like, our role is to do as we're told. So Nowak's whole thing, Nowak and the blonde of the duo, I think the blonde of the duo is going to end up in the same boat as Nowak mentally. I think the one guy might branch away. I don't know. I've been proven wrong already by this episode of where I thought they were going to go as characters. But he's saying that we have to obey to survive. That is Nowak's mentality. We have to obey, follow the system to survive, be complicit to survive. And here's the thing. If you are in a place of privilege, that's so easy. That's so easy. I have friends who have family and their views are very different from mine, but they will be complicit in the destruction and harm of others because in their mind, they're never going to be that group that's targeted. And I'm like, oh, that's such a naive thought. And I'm like, oh, that's such a horrible thought. And to not care because you believe that compassion and care puts you in a place of danger is such a wild concept. Such a wild concept. And Nowak is saying, and what's interesting is Nowak is in a place of privilege to do this because he's safe. But if the tables were turned and he were not in a safe place, would he feel the same way? Probably not. But that's not where we're at. So he's like, you have to obey to survive. And so many people believe in this mentality. They go along with fascism. They go along with racism. They go along with genocide. They go along with things because they're not the ones targeted. And they believe that as long as they're complicit, they won't be targeted. And that's such a crazy mentality to have. It's understandable, but it's crazy because your fellow human is dying next to you. But because you think it'll never be you, you're okay with it. Anyway, I think he's going to eat these words. He says, its heretics will do whatever it takes, which is the hypocrisy because I'm like, you're doing whatever it takes to survive. The same. You're just in a place of authority and privilege compared, right? They have a pact with the devil to change the world. And that's the moment he said that, I'm like, oh, was Raffles' words that instrumental in you having this trauma? Because that's what it sounds like. Wild. Absolutely wild. I'm like, this 12-year-old shook you to your core. He's like, do you know what's most important to prevent and maintain the world we have now? It's terror. It's fear. Mm-hmm. So in his mindset, it's fear that maintains power. And yeah, that is 100% true. We see it now. We see it now. People, as long as they make you scared, as long as they make you afraid of the other person and what they could do, then yeah, that's a way of maintaining power and order and making people comply. And it's been the tried and true method for centuries and centuries and centuries, right? But here's my fear. He's gone on this whole tirade to them and explained his philosophy to these impressionable little sponges, right? My fear is he's going to eat his words because Nowak is very much, he tries to take Yolenta out of the equation, which we're going to talk about at the tavern scene. He doesn't want her being involved because that's his daughter. He loves his daughter. He's doing all this for his daughter. He's not told his daughter what he does for a living because I think he's ashamed that she will judge him and disengage from him if she knows, which I think is a possibility of happening. If Aksha and Badini die or are tortured and she finds out and realizes he was the one doing it, I think she would judge him. But we'll see. But here's my problem. Yolenta is established at this point as someone deeply invested in heliocentrism. She has been talking about dabbling in the pagan ways. Hell, she could be at that Black Mass. Who knows? She's been dabbling in the paganism. And Nowak has just spent a majority of this episode telling these two sponge recruits that they cannot discriminate based on personal connection, based on gender, based on whatever. A heretic is a heretic. They're liars, and you have to do what you need to torture them for the sake of humankind. So, if down the road, because we find out that Colby has been promoted, surprising no one, but he wants Yolenta to come with him, surprising no one, because as we know, Colby didn't do the work himself. He relied on her. So he's going to string her along like freaking, like a writer stringing along his wife to write ghostwriting for him, and is going to take advantage of her. But if he finds out that she has this heliocentric ideals. Would Colby throw her under the bus? Maybe not, because she writes for him. Maybe not, but somebody else might find out. And one of my theories that makes me worried about Yolinta's future is if these two recruits get a hold of her, she's gonna get tortured. And Nowak won't be able to do anything about it, because what is Nowak going to do? Is he going to be a hypocrite and be like, oh, well, don't torture her, she's my daughter? And they're like, but she's a heretic. And he's like, well, she's actually innocent. And they're like, but she's a skillful liar. Well, she's a woman, but you tortured a woman before. I feel like everything Nowak did to set up the example for these recruits was effective. But I think in my mind, as a writer, I could just see being like, oh, is he going to eat his words? If these two recruits get a hold of Yolinta and torture her, and he has to deal with that as a father? And is he going to admit that he's connected with her and possibly put himself in danger? I don't want Yolinta tortured. I don't, but I worry she could be. So I feel like theory number 2 is that these recruits are going to get Yolinta and torture her. And then in my head, I was imagining her being in the torture room and the recruits go in and they bring Nowak in and being like, we found the girl we're going to torture. And then Nowak realizes it's his daughter, and that's going to be like insane. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I could see it. And the fact that the blonde was like, we just have to go on and do what he told us. I feel like you're going to eat your words, Nowak. I feel like you're going to eat your words. So then we have foreshadowing, the biggest foreshadowing of all time, that they were going to get caught. And that was Bodini being like, I'll come back and write the letter later. Don't do that. If you think in the moment you should write a letter, write a damn letter. So Bodini's like, okay, there's the letter that Bodini was going to write. And he's like, I'll do it later. So there's a number of theories about this. One is that the letter is just never written. They get tortured, they possibly get killed, the letter's never written, or Bodini abandons it. Theory 2 is that Bodini writes the letter afterwards. Like whatever happens, he manages to get out by sacrificing Aksha or sacrificing Yolinta. We'll talk about that. But he manages to get out, and then whatever he was going to originally write in the letter, he completely changes and writes a different letter. Possibly. Also, third, it could be that Yolinta gets the letter. If something happens to Bodini and Aksha, Yolinta knew about all of his plans, and if she finds out that Nowak tortured her friends and that she's possibly at risk of being tortured herself, she may distance herself from her dad and say, bye, Dad, and take all of the material and head out and do what Bodini was originally going to do and leave the letter herself. That could be. Or Antony could get the letter. Antony could write the letter or whatever. Or it could be 5. It could be Aksha. There's lots of possibilities about this damn letter, whether it gets written or not, or who writes it. Achoo! My micro sneezes. But so they meet. They meet with the drinks clashing together, like in the OP, and we see Antony as soon as those drinks clash, which makes me think Antony's going to be connected to them, because in the OP he kind of seems like he's connected to them, but we'll see. But she's just like, what's going on? What do we find out? What have we decided with the heliocentric theory? And he's like, that's why I called you both here today. I finished it. And Yolinta is so surprised. She's like, okay, all right. He says, it's developed to the point where I don't mind making it public. I think it would be the irony of all ironies if Bodini, who is like, it's going to end with me, and I'm going to be one to take credit for it. I don't know at this point what the end result is going to be. If Bodini is going to be able to take credit for it, I want to say no, because I don't think it's going to go that way. But I don't know if Bodini's going to take credit for it or if he's going to willingly pass it off to someone else. I don't know, because he said it was going to end with him, but you know how that song and dance goes. And when I liked the idea of the candle, again, Icarus and the flame, moth to a flame, we're moving right now. And she's like, to think we're the only ones who know the truth. That's so astounding to me because, again, I feel like we as humans, sometimes we get main character syndrome. We get that occasionally, and we think we're the only ones affected by stuff. That, we are the protagonists of our own story. But I feel like sometimes we get a little self-centered, which is funny, or movements of the earth, that we forget that there are other people who can have similar ideas. Because that's kind of one of the big themes of this story, is that, you're worried that when Hubert dies, the evidence and the research is going to die with him. But then Raffle takes it over, and you're worried, oh no, Raffle's died, so that everything is going to end with him. But then this other heretic picks it up, and then it goes and passes to Aksha and Bodini. And then you're like, well, is it going to end with Bodini and them? And then one of the morals of the story, that is one of the more hopeful things to get out of this series as someone watching, is that ideas, you can't kill an idea. You cannot kill an idea. You cannot kill it. If one person has it, does that mean they're the only person that has that idea? No. There's probably someone of the billions of people in the world, someone's probably thinking similarly. Maybe not the same, but similarly, and will pick up where you left off with, which is one of the more hopeful things about the series, is that no matter what happens to Aksha and Bodini, I feel hopeful as the audience member of being like, well, somebody's going to pick up the heliocentric theory. It can't just end. It's not going to end. And we kind of know that because of where we are now. That's the spoiler. But it's like, well, how is it going to... The question is how, not when, not if, but how is the big question in this theory, in this series. So I find it funny that she says that. And then Bodini says the mathematical explanation is complete, but now there's just the philosophy, which is, where somebody's going to pick it up from there. I wonder if it'll be Antony. I think it'll be Antony, but we'll see. And she's like, what are you going to do from here? So he's like, I'm going to head to a republic in the Southwest, which I feel like Yolenta, I honestly, look, Yolenta's only 14. I don't ship her with anybody in this series. She's a baby. She's a kid. But I find her dynamic with Bodini as one of the more fascinating anime dynamics. It's like this platonic recognition of equality. And Bodini kind of, even though Bodini would throw her under the bus in a heartbeat, and does, inadvertently without even realizing it, or maybe he did realize it, we'll talk about it in a hot second, but he recognizes her and her intellect. And he treats her as kind of like an equal. He doesn't look down on her because she's a woman, and he doesn't look down on her because she's 14. He treats her with a lot of intellectual respect. Now, is he going to throw her under the bus because if he knows how the system in this society works right now? Yes. But I find their dynamic so fascinating. So he says, I'm going to head to a republic in the Southwest. There's more freedom to research there. And she's like, oh. And she's like, that sounds fun. There's the abbot from the Central Abbey spreading bad rumors about me. So we found out, I'm sure that the tip that Nowak got was from the abbot that has the book from Piast. I'm sure that's the case. Again, that makes me a little worried from Yolenta if Colby or one of them turns her in. I don't think Colby will because he's relying upon her, but we'll see where that goes. And then he's like, I have no further need for the clergy anyway. And that's kind of, I respect Bodini because Bodini's like, you can have faith and believe in God and have a spirituality without relying upon a church. I know some people don't believe that, and that's fine if you don't, but I've always been a Christian that believes like I don't have to go to a church to feel faith and to feel spirituality and to practice my faith. I know some people need the self-discipline. Some people like the community of it. But that's just not me. And I respect people that think that way. If you need my best friend though, my best friend is a Christian and goes to church every Wednesday because that's to them, that's a sense of community and they're an extrovert. They like the socialization of it. That's not me. And the churches around me, I know how they are and they don't really align with how I interpret the Bible. So I'm like, no. Not my thing. But anyway, I respect Bodini. He's like, support myself. I'll work as a tutor for nobles or the wealthy interested in academics. I like that even as Bodini is like, I'm going to tutor and pass on my knowledge to those worthy. He's so elitist, but I kind of love it. I'm just like, bitch. Okay, you do you, Bodini. You do you. Whenever Aksha was like, I want to go to the university, Bodini was like, what? A peasant? A commoner? Go to a university? God, I love it. And then Yolenta, she's like, well, I'm going to keep working with Colby because right now that's what's going to benefit me. She's like, but I would like to publish my own treatise someday. My fear, though, the thing that makes me sad is I'm like, if you keep going with Colby and them, you're not going to publish your own treatise because you think Colby's going to let you if he's using your information for himself. I don't know. But I don't know. I think she'd have to get away from that. But Aksha's like, I'll find work somewhere and save up money and then go to university. And Bodini's face just like, that's such a meme. Bodini's face at 1642 is hilarious. Freaking hilarious. And so she asks about the book that he wrote. And he's like, well, it's more of a diary. I don't really want anybody else to read it, whatever. And I'm like, well, Bodini's already read it. But I like that Bodini is like, that's a stupid goal. Jolinda's like, that's a wonderful goal. And he's like, you have a dream. My guild mentor used to say, it's good to have dreams. And then he says, these days I feel like I finally understand what he meant. As long as I have a dream, I feel I can survive a week's worth of tragedy. My God, the foreshadowing. My God, you jinxed yourself, sir, because the Nowak comes in. I'm like, that to me, I'm like, Aksha's going to get tortured, but he's going to live through the torture because he has a dream. And he's going to keep striving towards that dream. I feel like Aksha like channeled the spirit of Hubert in that moment of like, I can handle a week's worth of tragedy. I'm worried. The sheer foreshadowing. So now we get Nowak showing up. And Bodini, the thing that's so frustrating about this part of the episode is that Bodini's eye patch does not allow us to see his eye, which does not allow us to see his reaction to Nowak this entire time. By the end of it, it seems like Bodini didn't suspect anything. He was just like, oh, it's her dad. Okay, he works for the church. Cool, that makes sense with her being in this research position and all that. Aksha's freaking out because he recognizes him and is worried that Nowak's going to recognize him, which he at least recognized something was up. But the thing that's crazy is that Bodini, I don't think, now that I've watched the episode and I'm talking to you all with it post-reaction, I don't think Bodini meant for this to be like throwing Yolanda under the bus, but he very much does. Because, you know, he's like, when a man's with his family, he wants to forget about work. And it's like, he's like, you are serving God. And he's like, is that so? And he's like, if I may, how do you know my daughter? You don't seem to be associated with the priest laboratory. And so Bodini picks up and speaks for Aksha, which is the smartest thing anybody can do, and says, you know, I work with the local church. We conduct research into astronomy and astrology on the side. And Aksha's like, Nowak's like, oh, research? Nowak's like, I'm not getting my daughter involved with you because y'all are my tip and I don't want my daughter involved. But here's the thing. Bodini don't give a shit about throwing people under the bus at all. So if he ends up getting potentially tortured by Nowak and those two sponge recruits are there, Bodini will say, he's involved with me. Your daughter's involved with me. Go interrogate her as well as a heretic. And those sponge recruits will be like, that's what we've got to do. And what's Nowak going to do about that? And if Antony finds out, because Antony does not seem to like Nowak at all, if Antony catches wind of this, he'll be like, yeah, bring her in. You're the inquisitor. Do your job. Prove us that you're worth your money. And I don't know if Bodini realized that he was throwing her under the bus. But he's like, we met your daughter at the town bulletin board. She's very well informed. So we meet once in a while to exchange knowledge. All those bombs being dropped. He's like, we meet her. We talk with her. She's in on the research too. We exchange knowledge. She gives and we give. So there, it's not just, we didn't drag her into this. She's an equal share partner in this. And Nowak very much does not want her involved. And he passes off like, well, isn't that something? Isn't that nice? Meanwhile, inside, he's like, I'm going to murder both of you so that you can't tell that my daughter's involved. And I'm like, Suda is so perfect for this role because Suda is able as a voice actor to not only have this like nonchalance, like kind of almost bored sounding voice, but then it changes on a dime and he can be so scary and so funny in the same, like, Suda's one of my favorite voice actors. I love him. And so I'm like, yes. A clergyman and a scholar, you must be quite diligent. And he's like, I have a lazy streak. And I'm like, bullshit. And then Badini's like, my diligence is nothing compared to your daughter's. And he's like, she's clear-headed and a wise person. He's like, oh, well, thank you so much. And I honestly think, looking back on it, I think Badini was just trying to be his version of complimentary, and he was trying to schmooze. But Nowak is realizing how involved his daughter is in all of this through this conversation, and is probably internally freaking out because he doesn't want his daughter to get hurt. And she's like, oh, it's embarrassing. Can't a father be happy when his daughter's praised? And so he takes her away, but he just went right around the building. And Badini's like, what is up with you? And he was about to say, he's like, I know that man. He didn't say anything out loud. He's like, if my memory's correct. And then he showed up. And the moment he said he was an inquisitor, that's when Badini was like, oh, uh-oh. Badini was like, oh, shit. Like, his mouth just dropped open like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. We've been caught. Now, Badini's smart. So Aksha probably is not thinking about this, but Badini's going to throw every single one of them under the bus to get out and to use his position. It's so funny because he was talking about leaving the clergy, but he's going to use that to his advantage to get out of this because he wants to get that stuff published. So, this isn't going to end well. None of this is going to end well. But it's going to be hard to wait till the next episode, y'all. It's going to be hard to wait. So I'm going to wait for comments on episode 8 or 9 till I can read those. When the mods give me approval, I'm going to wait on that. And then I'm going to dive right into episode 12 because I need to know. It's the halfway point of the season. A girl needs to know. So anyway, I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below. I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. Oh my God, this episode was terrifying. And I feel like we're just getting started on the roller coaster. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care. And yeah, I'll be back very soon with more of ORB on the movements of the earth. Bye.